Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern, and I'm with the gorgeous inside and out Ginette.
Yep, you got it.
And I love that it's like a soft j, because when I first encountered you, I was like Ginette, because that's how we would say it here in Canada, right? Yeah. So it's Ginette. And I stumbled upon you probably like over a year ago now, looking at tarot somehow or another on YouTube, like I've been doing, and I'm a Gemini, and I just found out that you're a Gemini. Yeah. And then through that, somehow came upon you, and then you were on Seeking Centers podcast, and Robin lives here.
Okay.
And so it's such a good connection. I'm like, oh my God, I already kind of found her. And then the universe sort of reinforced, like, yeah, she's the real deal. And you truly are the real deal. And I love that you read every comment that people make. And I feel like a little mini stalker / super fan when I make my comments. But you have to know, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that says this to you, I'll wake up and it's a ritual with me. And I make my coffee, I listen to you. It's like a whole thing. I play fetch with the dog, I'm listening to you. Standing outside, I'm doing my grounding. And lo and behold, you'll either have said something that I had already been thinking about, or I have dreamed about. Dreamed, whatever. Or I journal sometimes before I turn you on, and I've been writing the same words that you say.
That's so neat.
Yeah. So if you just for a moment, tell my listeners who you are, what you do, and how you describe it is what you do.
Okay. So yes, besides being a human trying to navigate this journey like everybody else, right? I also have the abilities of mediumship and channeling. And so it's something that's sort of evolved my whole life. I can retrospectively look back to early childhood, being 5 years old, and knowing there were invisible people in my room. I couldn't see them yet, but I could feel them. And then my mediumship developed later in life. And so I finally got to a point in my journey in my, mid-20s, early 20s, where I could no longer ignore the things that were happening. So I had to embrace them. So I had to do a deep dive into what the heck is going on with me. Why am I seeing, hearing, and feeling things that are not there, And they are terrifying. And it led me to starting to kind of reach out and help people with what I would see, hear, or feel, which then led me to learning as much as I could about the gifts, doing readings for people. And I was really busy doing readings for about a decade through word of mouth. And I was solid busy for about a decade. And then I had a near-death experience in 2019, which just catapulted it even more so. And it's just been this fast-paced, very deep journey since then, in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So going back to childhood, because there's so much that we talk about in terms of how did you know when you thought you might have been gifted? And I vividly remember laying in my bed being terrified as a child. And I thought there was someone in my closet. And for whatever reason, I decided to always sleep facing my closet because I thought, well, if I turn my back, whatever that is going to get me. And for all I know, it probably was my guardian. And I didn't know what that was. And nobody in my family probably had the language at the time to tell me anything. And I just knew I was terrified, slept with the light on a lot. But when I would close my eyes, it would be like, I don't know how it is by you, but here before cable, all the TVs would turn off at midnight. They'd play the national anthem with the flag, and then there'd be snow, like in Poltergeist, the movie. And that's what I would see when I would close my eyes, but it would be like purple. And then it just kind of went away, and I forgot about it until I started meditating regularly. And that's what happens now, is it's like the screen. So when you were starting to notice you had your abilities, how were you supported in that journey? Or did you have people in your life that could speak that language and support you?
Yeah, no, I
Mm,
didn't. It was a very lonely journey and it was a very confusing time. So like it started to get a lot stronger when I was about 17. And I remember at this time though, like I had no concept of what I was dealing with. So I remember thinking I must be losing my mind. I must be crazy. It triggered tons of anxiety, which I then had to
mm,
learn to deal with. But little did I know that learning how to learn my own mind and master my own mind to move through anxiety would be the key to allowing me to open to spirit so I would know
mm,
what's mine, what's not. Right. So,
mm,
although that was one of the hardest times, it was also the platform for understanding everything else. And so, I mean, sometimes I would share things with my family, but there was nobody in my family that was like, that grandmother that talked to spirits or the wise one that did this. There wasn't really that, and I can't fault my family for that either. Like they did what they could do with what they knew. So I really kind of just kept it to myself for a long time and just tried to deal. And then it was again when I was kind of like well, even in university, I remember I'd be looking at the professors speaking, or even in high school, and they would be glowing. And I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my eyes? I got glasses, all the things. I didn't know I was seeing their auras,
yeah.
you know? And so when I first started sharing this with my family, and then even my husband's family and those around, they didn't really know what to do with it. Like it was kind of just this like, I'm a medium. It's like, okay. And then it's
Mm.
just like blank,
What
right?
does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Like, are
think
you
at first,
reading my mind? You know?
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a good point. So some people would be afraid I could read their mind, right? So they
Mm,
didn't want to look at me in the eyes. I remember that one. But they didn't really understand it. And it really took a couple years of them seeing what I was doing, hearing stories of what I was doing, like time spent doing and then time spent observing on their part for them to be able to come around and understand it better to the point where now it's very free flowing what I do. And it's great. I think like the evolution of it has also helped teach everyone around me simply by observing it, right? And
yeah.
open their minds. So like it's been a journey, but it's also been amazingly beautiful, but also very deep, right? As everyone watching knows, when you're on a spiritual
Yeah.
journey, you're going to go deep.
Yeah. If you're willing to do that work, I was just writing a whole blog post I'm going to put up, kind of in that way of be prepared for this journey. And if you're
Hmm.
not, my whole tagline is you matter. And I say
Absolutely.
it at the end of my newsletters and I say it whenever I can in my posts. And if I could just make that my platform, which someday I will, and I'm doing it now, just to say you matter is you have to start there
Hmm.
because if you don't feel that you do, then when you're awakening or you're being you're in a family that has doubts or a very religious family. We hear about this all the time where, the devil's talking to you kind of thing. If you don't have a sense of yourself, then
Hmm.
you're not going to be able to stay on the path. And it's not a smooth road. And there's lots
Yeah.
of beautiful vistas and really deep valleys,
Yeah.
bumps and potholes along the way. And my my gateway drug, if you will, into this whole experience now has been yoga. So without that, I wouldn't have really been able to develop the way that I'm doing now because then it's all about chakras with me. But I know you're a singer too, and I want to get to that. But also, like when I sing and when we dance and when we just like honor our joy,
Hmm.
um, it it's more open to coming through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So after the fact, after you sort of came out to your family, did you then find out, well, Grandma Ethel was always psychic, or so and so in our family has always been. So did you find out more about your lineage?
Yeah. So again, there wasn't anyone in the lineage that I know of still that was like significantly like a psychic or known that way. But I did like people started to talk a little bit about their strong intuitive sense, right? So there are a couple people that I had chatted with in my family and extended family that were like, I've always had this ability of prophecy and like knowing something was going to happen, or I would dream things would happen, or so like I realized there's a bunch of us that are actually much more intuitive than we were ever given any insight about.
Mhm.
Um, And so I think that's really neat, right? Like how it kind of comes to the surface. And also, what it actually showed me is when we start to be able to open up the conversation about extrasensory perception, gifts, and abilities, we actually realize that every single person has access, conscious access to at least one,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's had a something, and it just really kind of normalizes the conversation about it. And so I really like that that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I don't know if it was you that said it, you probably did, or somebody else that I also respect a lot. And sort of like when one opens, it sort of gives permission to other clairs to come online. And not
Mhm.
everybody's meant to have all the clairs firing at all the time. But I kind of liked thinking about, oh, yeah, I do get a little more nudges in this way or that way because I have nudges in this way or that way. For me, I'm starting to see faces. It's almost like I'm under the surface as if I'm like a big barrel of apples and people are bobbing for me, like
Mm-hmm.
coming in and out of the surface. And it's always noses first, which is why
Interesting.
I feel like it's bobbing for apples. And then it'll be like a face. And then my mind, of course, goes like, well, who's that? Is that my dad? Is that a
Mhm.
guy? Like, who is that? And then it'll kind of go away, And
Yeah.
it's more just, with Reiki, I just know things. And when I teach, I just know things. So I'm just happy with that. But of course, I want to talk to my mom, who's on the other side, and my dad and my grandma. And it's funny because before my mom passed, I had a dream and it's always like this dark, I've written to you about this, but it's just tunnels and stairways and ladders and whatever. And I'm going through this house and she's there. And something came up and I said something about being intuitive. Are you intuitive? This is before she died. And she said, you have no idea and you'll find out how much. Right. And
Mhm.
it wasn't like in a threatening way, but I was like, wow,
Mhm.
how come I never knew this?
Yeah.
And then in readings I've had with people, my grandma comes through a lot. And I wish as a child, when she was alive, I could have asked her questions and maybe she would have been able to tell me, don't tell anyone, but
I find it interesting how many souls on the other side talk about their hidden gifts and abilities once they've crossed over, of how they're like, I knew I was psychic or I was very clairvoyant, but I never told anybody.
yeah,
It's so interesting to see that and how much they want to encourage people now to not hold that back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
like your platform does that. I wanted to ask you, so you came online with all of this stuff. When did you then start using tarot in the way that you're doing now?
So that's a great question because I didn't learn my mediumship. I didn't start by using tarot cards. I kind of fell upon Oracle and tarot cards a little bit later on in my journey, but it was actually my guides that encouraged me to get online and start sharing tarot and oracle readings. And they said, because this is what it's going to do. They're like, every day you can bring a message for the collective through the tarot and oracle. They can see what they need to see in the images and they can pull what they need to pull from the message. And you can share your joy of doing this, which you're doing for yourself every day. So share it with the collective. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. And then they're like, don't worry, we'll come through and we'll give you lots of insight too. But just why don't you do it? And I was like, that's a great idea. And so literally that's how the daily card reading started. It wasn't because I was like, I want to be a tarot reader online. Because honestly, if I do readings with people, I don't use cards. I just
Mm,
tune in. I've always just tuned in, and that there's nothing against cards. Obviously, if you
mhm.
watch my card readings, I love them.
Yes.
But that's not how I tune in. I guess now in my card readings, I always tune in to spirit first and get a message and insight. Like that's what I normally do. And the cards just add tangible color for
Mm.
people to pull from because we all interpret different things and it gives more. So it's been a really neat evolution. It was totally spirit led.
Yeah. And your cards are beautiful, by the way. And I love that you incorporate other decks. I love the holographic tarot, which is
Mhm.
like, my regular Rider Waite, but like on rainbow
Yeah.
steroids. It's love
Yes.
it. So Avalon Spirit, how did that come up in terms of like I just today my podcast is out with a woman and we talked about Avalon, like where it's located. So
Mhm.
does it connect? Like how did that happen?
Yeah, so this is really neat. So I wrote about it in my book. So I'm going to condense this part of the story.
Okay.
Um, a couple, what was it, a week before my near-death experience, which happened during a surgery,
Mm.
I was really not well, but we ended up going on this camping trip anyways because I didn't want the kids to miss out, right? And I was like, I'll just hang back when you guys are doing stuff. I'll nap a lot. Don't worry about it. So at one point they were all out and I was having a nap in the tent and I kind of fell asleep and then this massive gust of wind and we were in the trees, right? So we weren't on a windy peninsula for this kind of wind, but this massive wind blew through the tent and woke me up and Spirit said you need to remember what was to be Avalon is now Aurora. And I was like, "What?"
Oh,
They're like, what was to be Avalon is now Aurora. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, just make sure you don't forget. Don't forget that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah. And I'm trying to fall asleep again. They're like, don't forget it. I'm like, I won't, right? So the next day, again, it was just pinging in my mind. What was to be Avalon is now Aurora. And they explained to me that Avalon was where my soul was going to be going, the afterlife, the other side. My soul was prepping to cross over if that's what I chose. And I didn't know at this point I was leading up to an NDE. I knew I was having a surgery, but it was a routine surgery. It was a uterine ablation or
mhm.
to help my cycles, right? So I wouldn't hemorrhage. And so what was to be Avalon, the other side, was now Aurora. And I was like, what was Aurora? And the auroras, they explained to me, when we see the aurora borealis, they're like, that's an energy of change making itself known in physical form on your planet. So like when we get major solar flares, which are consciousness coming to our planet, we can see the validity of it when we see the northern and southern lights, right? When we
Wow.
see the aurora borealis dancing, that's that energy of change coming from the cosmos. And so they said to me it represented a change on this planet. And so I was like, okay. And so essentially, then I had my near death experience, and they had asked if I wanted to stay or come back. And I wanted to come back. And one of the deals I made with them, and I say it was a deal or an agreement, but it wasn't in a negative, like you must do this. But they were like, if you're going to go back, which is totally fine, you need to step up in what you do. You need to not just hang back by keeping busy by word of mouth. Like you have a lot to share and we can share a lot of info through you. So step up. And so at that time, I had already met Lois, my business partner at Avalon Spirit.
Mhm.
And we had met through actually DNA stuff because I was a kinesiologist before and studying DNA. And anyways, long story short, she said, one day I would like to start a spiritual company. I was like, I would love to do that too. And it was just this far out thought. And then after my NDE, we just both knew it was time. And we knew it was Avalon Spirit. It was the understandings from the other side, all the wisdom. And within 6 months of my NDE, we'd started Avalon Spirit. I'd started the podcast. I started the YouTube channel. We started the Facebook group that, like, it just, everything flew to this crescendo point of like a next level beginning. And so that's where Avalon came from. Yeah.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
great. And I remember hearing you describe that in kibbles and bits when I see you every day.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and then something else you shared just the other day was I didn't know. I know that you're back to singing, but I hadn't
Mhm.
understood that you actually had a singing career. And you shared that they gave you a choice of either staying and pursuing this career or
Mm.
having kids, basically. And I can't believe they were allowed to do that without getting sued. But
Yeah.
what kind of, like, what was your career supposed to look like? And I'd love you to talk about how it sort of transformed to now.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Um, it wasn't like a hard line of like you either do this or you cannot. Like if we were going to take my career further though, which would
Mhm.
require more investment, it would require me to commit to a certain amount of time where I can't be busy having babies, you know?
That's kind of
And so,
that's what I heard you say,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
whittled it down.
Yes, no,
So,
that's fair. That's
because
fair.
how it
Um,
resonated with me is like those motherfuckers, I can't believe they did that.
I know. No, like they were
Yeah.
actually really like the ones that my actual management, they were fantastic people. They were fantastic people. But it was this like juncture point of like, well, what are you going to do? You know, like, are you going to commit to this fully? And I remember like growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be a singer. Like I wanted to sing. But at the same time, singing to me is the scariest thing I could do. Like it is the most vulnerable, scariest thing is for me to sing, although it's the thing that I love the most. And so I remember this one, like my goals in singing was I wanted to go on tour. I wanted to win an award. I wanted to sing in an award show, and so in my career of it, and I was singing while I was going to university, I ended up being able to do all of those things, but on just a bit of a smaller scale. I never made it
Mhm.
to the Grammys, right? But I did make it to the BC Country Music Awards. And I did win
Ooh.
an award in the BC Country Music Awards. And I did get to go on several tours, but they were Canadian Forces tours all over the world to sing for the troops all over the
Mhm.
world. So, like, I got to do all these things. And I remember when I was singing at one of the award shows, I remember standing backstage and seeing some prominent artists backstage warming up, and I'm sitting there. And I remember this knowing and this voice being like, your time here is complete. And I just knew that part was done. Even though we were like in the momentum of like, we've accomplished these parts, we're going to be going. And I just knew something else was coming down the pipe. And so it was really interesting to see how that transformed. And when I quit singing, it was actually this like mourning period for about a year and a half where I identified so much as being
Mhm.
that singer.
Mhm.
Even though I did tons of other things, I didn't know how to identify after for a little while because
Yeah.
I quit and then I did not sing even in the shower or even in the car for 2 years. I just didn't.
Wow.
And then it slowly came back. And then Spirit, a couple years ago, they were like, you didn't go through all of those experiences singing to not use it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't do that now. I do mediumship and I do this and this. And they're like, you didn't go through all of that to not use your voice. And
Mhm.
so I finally had the nerve after this last round of being sick this past summer. I finally had the nerve to start recording again and just recording the music that wanted to come out instead of the music that I was trying to fit myself into back in the day. And it's
Mhm.
such a fun experience and expression now that I'm exploring and I'm right at the beginning of it, but I'm just loving it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You've got a
Thank
beautiful
you.
voice. I didn't know till just now your genre was
Yeah, even before that though, it was pop. So it was
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like Latin-y pop kind of style, and then we switched to country. Um, and then yeah, and now I sing like spiritual music. Like you would think, who are you? What are
yeah.
you doing?
So, gosh, all right. So backstage, you're about to go on stage and you get this knowing. And, I wish for people listening to, we all get those nudges. And
Mhm.
then whether we consider ourselves intuitive or not, we often talk ourselves out of those nudges. I've worked so hard. This has been my dream for so long, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. But you get these flashes in those moments where you're like, I'm done here.
Mhm.
And then what? Right. So the loss of an identity is such a huge thing, which of course it's all about the root chakra and everything. I miscarried a set of twins before I had my first child. And because of that situation, I had to be on bed rest for all of my subsequent pregnancies. And I had no idea until I was forced to hide, basically, how much I identified first. I had to quit my job. So, how much I identified with my working persona. Then the expectation that I'd be waddling down the sidewalk and people would notice me being pregnant and say, like, oh, you're pregnant, and da da da. I never had that because I was on bed rest. And just how the ego makes us think one way, and then life gives us this other way in order to teach us, hey, babe, you are not just your voice or you're not just your job. And it also taught me really quickly how results oriented I was, especially when you have a child. There's no bonus, there's no shower sometimes, right? We know.
Mhm.
And it's like this never ending, wonderful job. But if you come from a paycheck every week or 2 weeks, you're not getting that. So,
Mhm.
how you identify a good job completely changes, right? And
Yeah.
so I digressed from there. But yeah, I just wanted to offer that when we get those glimmers of the download or the flash of inspiration, to remember it and honor that you are yourself really smart at a
Mhm.
default. And it's only our doubt that creeps in, or society that says you can't possibly change careers right now. So
Right.
that's amazing that you were able to do that. Yeah. And in terms of your career, you've got your spirit coffee talk with two other women. And I know I now listen to Linda Richmond's sound bowls and some of
Oh,
her
Lisa.
tarot. Lisa, sorry. Linda Richmond, I keep saying that. I think that's either a character or like some actress. Anyway, and then the other woman I don't know very well. Are they all in your
Elise
area?
Cafe. No, actually, Lisa lives in Saskatchewan in Canada and Elise lives in Alberta, but they are dear friends of mine and they all
Yeah.
work within Avalon Spirit as well. And yeah, we just knew we wanted to come together and chat spirit once a week and just share.
Station. It's so much fun too. And then, a lot of no surprise things that have been coming up and what I'm hearing just with your stuff, the polarities that are happening. And, we've got like the 3D, 5D, and we often hear it 3D versus 5D. And then, you know, people who are afraid of change are going to be afraid of change. And then that gives us a choice also. And so we're always sort of straddling, to me, the choice, the choice, the choice, the choice. And what I'm finding is when I choose not to stay in someone else's fear and rise my vibration above that, not in a way that's egotistical. It's just, I really can't go low. What would it serve, first of all? But I'm so
Yeah.
clear on my role is to stay in a way that hopefully will encourage and inspire people to come up. But the people that either don't know how to or don't want to are so angry, I find, with my lack of getting in their fight with them anymore, that they don't know what to do with it. So they're like, well, I just can't talk to you anymore because you just don't get me. I get you. I just don't agree that I have to be like you and stay in that darkness and stay in that fear. So are you finding that more and more in comments people are making to you or in your work with clients at all, and how to navigate that? I know you've been talking a lot about it.
That's a great question. I think it's really valid for where we're at right now too. I
Yeah.
think it's a couple things, to be honest. I think one thing is people are so exhausted, right? All across the board, even those that are kind of holding the light, if we want to call it that. There's an exhaustion that's happening because of the magnitude of changes we're going through right now on every single level, right? So if you take someone who's kind of bouncing up and down from, say, the really low frequency to the higher frequency, but they're bouncing and they're trying to hold to the higher frequency, but they haven't finished dealing with whatever is below, pulling them down. At the point of exhaustion, they just want understanding. And oftentimes, people in that sort of a victim mode or the anger mode, they don't understand that someone can understand them, but not need to get into the water with them, right? Like it's hard for them to understand until they can lift themselves up to understanding that concept. They're like,
Yeah.
why aren't you in the water with me? You obviously don't get it. And you're there like, no, I do get it, but I've already been in the water and I got out. So I'm going to help you from here, you know? So I think as much as that's frustrating, I also think though, it's beautiful in one sense because it means people are starting to raise their consciousness. And they might be in the anger phase, but the anger phase is stepping out of the complacency phase or the ignorance phase. They're actually getting angry. So they're reacting, which means they're wanting something to be different. And so I find what I try to do sometimes when people are in their anger and it's starting to trigger me is I try to think like, okay, they're in the anger phase of their transformation. So I can hold space for that, hold the boundaries where I need, and try and have compassion versus frustration to that because we can't help it. Sometimes we're like, no, I don't want to get in the water. Don't get me wet. But they're
Yeah.
like, get in
Yeah.
the water if you care about me,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's fair, but I just think it's an indicator of their change. They're starting to change.
Or
That like growth of
yeah.
frequency.
I hope so. I love that. I love that perspective. Thank you for sharing
Mhm.
that, because I've been feeling like there's just going to be those people that are just going to be where they are, and that's their role.
And they
That's
will
what they
be
signed
for
up
sure.
to be. And then the others, it's not like I intend on losing friends or backing away from people, but at some point, there's only so much that I can do that I've been able to.
Exactly.
And like you said, when they're ready to sort of start taking a few steps in a different direction, I'm happy to meet you there. But yeah, I don't want to get wet
Mhm.
anymore or muddy or stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Um,
some people might not move from that anger in this lifetime, and some might. right?
Right.
Like that's each person's individual journey. So that's where it comes to free will and personal soul choice. And like that's where we
Mhm.
can't force someone to change, as you know, right? So it's kind of one of those things where there does come a point where you have to decide, do I need a harder boundary here with this person? Because is it
Mm.
affecting my ability to stay dry? And you worked
Yeah.
hard to be able to get there. So
Yeah. Thankfully, and I've shared this a bunch lately too, for whatever reason, and I'm thanking all of my people and all of the learning that I've managed to do with people like you, thank you, is I just don't have the urge to like I'm a really good debater. I can certainly debate with the best of them if I need to and want to, and I do. But
mhm.
I don't have to all the time just to prove I'm right. And it's not even
Yeah,
about being right. I just know my truth now. And getting it's the whole thing about, don't get into a wrestling match with a pig because, you'll lose and the pig likes to be dirty anyway or whatever it is.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I just don't choose to wrestle in the mud. And it really makes people upset
yeah.
because they're so used to that part of me, I guess. They're like, what happened to the Lauri I knew who would stand on a soapbox? And I do plenty. It's one of the
Hmm.
reasons I have this podcast. It's just a different kind of box.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you have like mediumship training, I want to say. How do you've got another one coming up. I think you still have an ongoing one also. Like, do you want to talk about some of the things
Yeah.
that people can find their way to all that?
Absolutely. Thank you. So if someone's like kind of new to what I do, new to mediumship, I have a online beginner light worker mentorship level 1, which really gives people the basis of understanding kind of what's happening to them. A lot of people come to that and they're like, I don't understand what's happening. Sometimes I see spirits, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have prophetic dreams, sometimes I don't. I am confused. I don't know what's going on, right? So that one is an online one that people can sign up for at any point and take it at any time, right? And it gives you the foundation. I always say it's like in that course, level 1 and then level 2 as well. I help people pack their backpack for this journey, right? It's like I've been on this journey, I've done this hike a bunch of times. I'm going to share with you everything I find useful, show you how to pack it, how to use it. Once you learn how to use it, you choose if you want to keep it, throw it out, like you do what you need. But this is what I've learned and here it is. Hope
Mm,
it helps, kind of thing, right? Like, I hope this
mm,
can be helpful. And so, level 1 and level 2 are online recorded. After that, people progress into the Lightworker mentorship all levels, which is a 12-week weekly session with me in a group of 10 people. And we learn, like, we go deeper into the skills, and it is so much fun. I'm just wrapping up my most recent one right now, and we have had an amazing time. It's so fun. We learn a topic, we dive in, we have experiences, we share about it. People go so far. They grow so much, which is so cool to see, right? Like, when you're teaching people and
mm.
they're getting it and they're experiencing it and their hearts are opening, and it's just amazing. So there is a Lightworker mentorship weekly one coming up again. So there's a new one starting in February as
Mm,
well. And so that's on the Avalon Spirit website. So there's
mhm.
those things. There is also one of my most favorite things that I do is Cosmic Consciousness Circle,
Yeah.
which is open to absolutely anyone who wants to sign up once a month. And it's a deep dive into a topic, spirit led. Often they bring through channels and insights, and I absolutely love it. It's so fun. We've done deep dives into the consciousness of water, to last night was secret societies,
Yeah.
to like everything. It's so much fun. So if people want just like a backdoor access to deep dives, cosmic consciousness is the thing. So there's lots of things that I offer. And then the podcast that I offer, the Ginette Bro podcast, is, information that
Mhm.
people can listen to, and same with the card reading. So there's a lot of stuff out there, whether you want to invest in it or whether you just need the information, there's lots of stuff out there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know when you sleep. I mean, I know it's like 7 o'clock here when I'm making my coffee and turning on my YouTube, and you've
Yeah.
already recorded something, and you always look so showered and fresh, and like you've got this
Oh,
beautiful room behind you,
that's
and I
so
loved
nice.
your
Thank
golden
you.
disc and the
Thank
whole
you.
thing, and you just really set the tone personally speaking, for my entire day. And
Oh,
then,
I'm so
it's a
honored.
little sad when it's Friday and you're like, okay, here's for the weekend. I'm like, okay, goodbye. And then, of course, when you were sick and you were offline, it was
Mhm.
really such a beautiful return. You were so open about your journey and
Mhm.
about your abilities and your inabilities at the time. And it was just such a great sort of thing to witness just from this side,
Mhm.
because I know you somewhat, but I don't know you. And so I just felt like you really gave of your heart and of yourself in ways you didn't necessarily have to, but I can't imagine any other way with you.
That's so
And
nice.
so for those of you that don't know, you had another, would you call it another near-death experience or just a really,
No, it was
yeah,
I had another surgery, but this surgery I had an epic spiritual experience in it, but it wasn't a near-death experience. At no
right,
point did I have the option to cross over and come back, but
yeah,
they took me on this amazing journey of understanding deeper things again. So, yeah, it was really neat. But yeah, really it was a really tough time. So, I appreciate you saying that because it was like kind of walking through the forest in the dark for
mm,
several months there. And it's nice to be on this side of it now. And I
mm,
just have so much more gratitude for life, even. Yeah, it was a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it was, and I know you've got kids and you've got a life and a husband, and the description that you had, of course, of their care for you and all of that. Was it hard at all for you to come back online, no matter how long it took? Like, did your family appreciate what you do as your job? And
Hmm.
do they mind sharing you with all of us from time
Yeah,
to time?
that's a nice question. Yeah, no, they know that I'm so passionate about what I do. What I do. Like it's an expression of who I am. So to have me not do this would be weird because it's what I do, right? Like I just want to share what I know for people. If it helps them, great, you know? So they were really supportive, but they were also very supportive of like, just take the time needed to rest. Like,
Mhm,
don't worry about it. And I'm someone that likes to like, as soon as I'm better, go for it, like 100%. And this has been a journey of like taking little steps at a time to kind of balance the energy coming back. And but my family, yeah, they've been so supportive. And my kids, I mean, my husband was amazing, but my kids were just such resilient little humans too through all of it. Like it was really hard on them. And when I kept having to go back to the hospital over and over and over, like we had to call an ambulance one day. I remember like having to tell my kids again for the fourth or fifth time, like, guys, I'm sorry to wake you up. Mom has to go back to the hospital.
mhm,
And like my daughter would just wake up crying, like, Mommy, why aren't you better? Like it'll make me
mhm.
tear up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But to be able to then be on this side, where, because I remember
Hmm.
I kept saying to them, I'm like, don't worry, we're going to get to a day where we're going to look back at today of how hard today was. And we're going to be in that day where, like, how much better I am, right?
Hmm.
And it'll be an amazing moment. And we've had those moments now where we're like, remember when we had to call the ambulance? And then look how much better I am now. And so they've been able to witness like healing and
Hmm.
support and it grew their heart so much too. So again, like as hard as it was, it's also been this beautiful bonding experience for my family.
Hmm.
Um, One I don't really hope to repeat in the
Yeah,
same way
right.
again either. So
Thank you for sharing that. I'm giggling because I'm going to ask a question. I don't think I've ever asked anyone like you, and like you, I mean like a medium.
yeah,
Um, couldn't you have predicted this was going to happen? Like,
I know, right?
did you
I
get
know.
no warning? And like, you couldn't have told your kids, listen, I'm going to get really sick, but everything's going to be fine. So it's like people think we know this kind of stuff, but we're
Mhm.
humans going through the experience as well.
Mhm.
So, did you ever have that conversation with your guys? Like, guys, come on, like, how come you didn't warn me here?
Yeah. So this has been such a neat experience in that. So couple things. When I had my near-death experience in 2019, I had the opportunity during that experience to look over my life blueprint up
Mm,
until like from when I was born to where we were in that moment on the other side, and then the remaining part of my blueprint if I was going to come back. And when I agreed I was going to come back, they told me that I could replace some different juncture points in my blueprint, meaning
mm,
like those soul destiny points, like lessons we want to learn as a soul. And so I remember changing it out. And it looked like pulling out fuses in a fuse box and putting in different colored ones. And they said, you're not going to remember the other ones, but you'll remember the first one. And they're like, you'll remember the other ones once they happen. And I was like, okay. And the first one was that I wouldn't be chronically ill anymore. And because I would get everything before. I would get every cold, every flu, all the time. And I remember taking the first one out and being like, are you sure this is how it works? Like, I literally can put this down and pick up this one and plug it in. They're like, yeah.
So cool. Oh
And
my God.
it took me about a year and a half to realize, like, after my NDE, that it was legit. I was like, I haven't gotten every cold and every flu and everything. Like, oh my God, this is real. So when I had been talking with Spirit, like, is this surgery a good idea? Because I finally ended up having a hysterectomy, okay? Because
Mhm.
the first surgery was great for a little bit, but we needed to do the hysterectomy. So they were like, yes, this is in your best interest to do this now. This is going to be very beneficial for you. All of these things. I'm like, okay, great. And Spirit was actually encouraging me to do this the year before. And I was like, well, I can't because my daughter and I are doing a duo we're dancing because we dance competitively. And we were actually getting the opportunity to compete together, which was just like the most beautiful thing ever. And I didn't want to give up that opportunity. And I still am glad I chose that. But what happens is that depleted my energy so much in that year that it put me at more of a deficit. So this surgery was a most likely plan in my blueprint. It would also give me different upgrades, which is a whole other story. But they said the severity of which I had to suffer was probably less if I would have listened to them and had the surgery the year before
Mhm.
because of the toll I put on my body and my liver. And my liver was the biggest issue for me after.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair point. That's where we get that human free will piece of like, because I said, I'm like, should I not dance with my daughter this year? And they're like, well, it's your choice, but
Hmm.
it's a bigger toll on your body. And I just figured I can handle it. Right. But I wasn't seeing
Yeah.
all of it. So did I know it's coming retrospectively? I can understand the series of events. It didn't need to be as intense as it was, but I chose to do the dance, which to me is a core memory I would never give up on.
Hmm.
Right? It's so valuable to me that we did. Um, so yeah, like it's been an interesting journey, but your point is so true. Just because we're mediums and psychics or can tune into energies, we don't get everything perfect. And we also don't get to bypass everything either because we're still humans
Hmm.
learning on this soul journey too. So sometimes we are kept in the dark to make a free will choice to see what it is we're going to choose to do and evolve through that experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It sounds like there's another book in the works.
There is actually,
Yeah.
there is. There's actually two. We have the journey of my surgery and stuff. That one's going to take a little longer because I think I'm still gaining pieces of the information to make it a complete book. But we do have a draft of another book all on just like spirit info and insights, understandings, and stories. So
Yeah.
that one we're hoping to maybe get out this year in 2025.
That's amazing. I've got books I'm meant to be writing that I write every day, and I've been
Mm,
blogging on my website and things. And there's a few genres that one is more like textbook, and the
mhm,
other is more like personal nonfiction narrative kind of thing. Just I want to
mm,
talk about the period around when my mother passed, because there's a
mm,
lot, not just what I heard you say through the cards, but also astrologically happening at the same time. And when I
mhm,
look back at that time, it's just amazing just how it can inform, right?
mhm.
And just what you
Absolutely.
said, free will, like had I had any idea the way that was all going to go down, would I have made any different choices? Probably a few. But what I now know is the way everything was in process outside of me, I was doing exactly what I was meant to be doing in the moment.
Mhm, mhm.
And
I
so
get that.
it provides comfort. It's also it's the two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
It's like we know what we know if we're lucky to, but we don't always get to go back and reframe it, obviously, either.
Mhm.
And then the gift is, what did I learn from this?
Yeah.
And then, when we're able to sit back and say, what did I learn from this? Then we can see the worst of times as calling it a gift isn't in any way mitigating terrible things that happen to people, but the lesson is a blessing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, and it's really, I have to also thank you and people like you for reminding me that life happens and we keep living it. And whatever gifts we have in this life, we're meant to experience it and hopefully look at it like that glass half full,
Yeah.
even if, we're in the darkest of times. Yeah. So thank you for that. And now it's time for Joy on the Fives. So,
Oh,
Ginette,
yes.
I gave you some homework. This goes a couple of different ways on my show. Sometimes I just spring it on people. And in your case, I really wanted to give you some homework. And so I gave you the homework to set your alarm at five
Yes.
minutes to the
Yeah.
hour. So I'd love you to tell my listeners how many times did you do that and what brought you joy in those moments?
Okay, so I even wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Okay, so one of them was when I had just finished recording a podcast and sharing content. And it was interesting the timing because I wasn't even thinking of the timing, but I just finished recording and I was in such joy because it was like the moments of flow. And I realized, I'm like, life is about those moments of flow. Like that's really what we're searching for
Mhm.
is those moments of flow when we feel completely in alignment with what we're doing. Whether it's when you're going for a run and you feel in flow, whether it's creatively painting or singing or writing or building, like whatever it is, cooking, that is your flow moment. Flow moments bring me so much joy. Like I love them. I feel like they fill my cup big time. Another one was when the timer went off, I was like, okay, what brings me the most joy in this moment? And I walked past my bedroom and the sun was shining beautifully into my bedroom. And I was like, oh, absolutely. The most joy I could have right now would be to lay down in the sun like a cat and have a nap. And so I did. I just was
Oh,
like,
yes.
no, that's it. I'm doing my joy. And I went and
Oh,
laid
I love
down
it.
and I had the best nap ever. Like it was so cozy and comfy. And I was like, there is joy in when we choose to give ourselves the thing we want and not even a material thing like I want to buy this thing for me, but it's like the action that we so desire. And in that moment, it was to just stop, take advantage of the beautiful sun in my window and lay in it. And I did.
I
So
love that.
it just made me it just made me so happy. So happy. Yes. And then I realized too, I was like, okay, what am I not enjoy with then? And I mean, there's things we can think about, but one of them that really caught my eye, which I thought was interesting, is scrolling on
Mm,
social media, which is really funny because there are very good things on social media. There
mhm.
are. There are some very wonderful, insightful aha moments we can have, beautiful stories we can hear, but then there's also so much garbage. And I feel like there's a moment where I can check a few things, but if I keep scrolling, it literally sucks the joy out of my being. And
Yeah.
I was like, isn't that such good awareness?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing. So you did it a couple of times, and
I did it a couple. Yeah.
I'm so glad. Yeah. So my listeners know that my mission with part of my podcast is to bring more joy into people's lives. And when we make time for it, we
Hmm.
get more of it.
Hmm.
And if you ever like did a transcript of one of your podcasts or your morning messages, how many times you use the word, you'd be surprised because I find myself smiling from ear to ear because you talk about joy so much. And we
Hmm.
know in the work that we do, it's the highest vibration. And so, we don't have to like work hard to stay in it, but when we're open to experiencing it more, and even the way you described the soul sucking energy of scrolling through your phone as a moment of joy to notice that you need a boundary,
Hmm.
or what you like to view versus what you don't. Like I've started taking ads off. I get all these ads for all this stuff. And so I've started to try to like sort of reset the algorithm with that. So thank you for sharing those moments with
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
you can keep doing that all the time. It's just my little
Yeah,
gift.
right? I think it's funny because this morning I did have an even a little moment too where like it wasn't on the timer, but I woke my daughter up this morning for school, usual thing. But it was so quiet in the house and I opened her door and she was just so cute and little. And I woke her up and she was all like squirmy in her bed. And there was like just pure joy in
Yeah.
watching this beautiful little human. And I just kind of like stood there at her doorway. And then I could tell she noticed me and she's kind of like, Mom, why are you just standing there? But I was in my absolute joy
Yeah.
just watching her wake up, you know, and I was like,
Uh,
this is joy. Like we can find it everywhere
mhm,
if we're looking for it. So I love that you're highlighting that in
exactly.
what you do. I think that's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. Yeah, it was inspired by a client of mine. I gave her
Mm,
that homework and it's been really transformative and I really like doing it every show I have. Like I said, I do it in a different way each time, some of the
mhm.
time. Is there anything else you want to share before we end our time together? And thank you so much for making this work out.
Yeah, no, this is
Yeah.
great. I'm so glad it all worked out. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Let me see. Let me just see actually if my guides have anything to share. How about that? Let me
Awesome.
just tune into them for a sec here. Hold on. Okay, this is interesting. This is from the Three Guides of the Light that I channel. And they said one way that people can kind of reroute their consciousness from being kind of pulled into the muck and instead rather kind of staying in the light is they're saying, hold on, they're saying something else. Yes. They're saying be productive in your creativity, first and foremost. Be productive in your creativity. Realize that you are producing something, like you are making, growing something when you create. And that creative growing energy is essentially a birthing energy. It is a beginning energy. It is a new spark of something energy. And they said the actual act of creating something or being productive in your creations, that spark energy is even more potent than we realize. And that spark energy just totally infiltrates the collective. So if people are thinking like, oh, I need to create something that's, you know, this revolutionary product that does this and this and this, it's not even that. It's when you are in your creative spark, when you're cooking or when you're drawing or when you're laughing and running on a riff of funny jokes or something, those spark energies totally fill up the collective energy with so much light because it's done from pure joy. And they're saying that's something to consider. It doesn't have to be so serious or so well thought out. It can be so spontaneous.
Hmm. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. I'm tremendously grateful because you don't know necessarily. I start teaching through the chakras every January, and we're in our sacral chakra this week. You're
Interesting.
wearing the color, and she's wearing
Right in
like
it.
a beautiful sort of melon color top. And
Yeah.
it's all about joy, creativity, passions, sensuality, sexuality, how you
Yeah.
express those things. And the piece I'm writing, and I do get serious when I write, and so it's a nice reminder because I do get very serious, is just to hit send and just it's perfect as it is. It's, I'm going to say
Mhm.
what I want to say, and I can keep saying it in other ways, which I plan to. But that whole connection of being allowed to express however that is truly
Mhm.
does raise the vibration of everyone around me when I'm in my joy. And so the playlists that I've made this week and the sequencing that I've cultivated this week, it's all about moving our hips around and finding that joy. And I've asked my students to be
Amazing.
completely ridiculous with some of the songs that I've chosen. And we're bouncing in our chair pose and all that stuff. And they're
Mhm.
very into it. It's very nice to see their
That's great.
reaction and joy. Yeah. So next week we move obviously up to solar plexus. So we'll be doing more core. But I love that that message coincides
Yeah,
with mine
that's
this week. So I feel like it was a little gift personally. Thank you.
that's awesome. That's
All
beautiful.
right. Well, tell everybody how to find you, and I'll put everything in the show notes as well. And if you want to link your book as well, you can just send me those details in an email
Sure.
with
Yeah.
all your stuff.
Okay.
But tell everybody.
Yeah. So you can find me on any social media as Ginette Biro Medium. So that's like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, if that lasts. And then also my podcast is the Ginette Biro podcast. And then as always, the home space is avalonspirit.com and everything is available on there too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for truly like not sleeping because I still don't know when you sleep. And your collaboration with your friends on the Spirit Coffee Talk, that's really fabulous too. And I just really, really appreciate everything that you're doing for so many
Aw,
people, whether
thank
you
you.
know you are or not. And so I hope that you stay well and keep doing what you're doing. So
Thank you so
thank you.
much.